Good afternoon, sports fans. I'm Alek Koberna. That's Matt Morrison. You're watching the Casual Sports Podcast here on YSNLive.com. Matt, rolling through another week here. We're getting down to Thursday. Obviously, we've had all the sports going on all week. We've talked college basketball. We've talked a lot of NFL. It's finally time. We get to finally finish off the season and talk some more college football to end things out. Obviously, we got national championship coming up on Monday. We'll talk about that on Monday's show. We'll get ready for a repeat of the SEC championship. Not expecting much of a game out of it. So, I mean, we got some great stuff coming out of this college football bowl mania season. Matt, before we go into it, what was your highlight from this college football bowl season this year?
I mean, there's so many to talk about. I mean, you got the mayonnaise being poured on the coaches, you got the Cheez-Its being poured on coaches. I mean, you've got upsets, you got Smith Najigbu, Jackson Smith Najigbu going off. That was insane. That was a highlight right there. And even the Utah quarterback, oh man, what was his name? Cam Rising went off in that game as well. That was sweet to watch him. Hopefully he's okay, though. I mean, he got kind of hurt near the end there, but hopefully he's okay. But that whole game was sweet. So there's so many to pick from. I don't even know which one to pick.
You got to pick something.
Pick something. I'll probably go over your Buckeyes, man. That was a sweet game.
It really was. I mean, we're obviously going to talk a little bit more about that game, but that's got to be my highlight as well. It's just that was crazy. I mean, first quarter, you thought they were going to be pretty much steamrolled over with the way Utah handled Oregon, and then
it was a comeback.
Ohio State, man, the legend of Stroud and Najigba, it just starts building right now, man. I mean, two amazing young guys, lots of talent. We'll talk about that a little bit later.
Marvin Harrison was sweet too.
But actually, I think one of my highlights was the way we started off Bowl Mania this year. The first day, Friday, December 17th, both games were within one score of each other. And I mean, I think it really just set the table for what this bowl season was going to be. We saw so many close, tight games, and the group of people that are set on putting these bowl games together did a fantastic job this season, really, of putting together a competitive slate of games. I mean, I think you saw, for the most part, just about every game was pretty competitive between a lot of these teams, especially some of the underlying teams. You didn't really see one conference dominate too much either, and you really only saw one or two conferences really struggle throughout this bowl season. So for the most part, I really feel like we had a very balanced slate of football games this off season.
Yeah, we did. There's some good bowl games. Even the Penn State game, even though we lost, I mean, that was a good game to watch. Arkansas hasn't been in a bowl game in years. So
right, and
cool
that came down to the final possession. The Iowa-Kentucky game came down to the final possession.
That was a good game.
Native, Stoops goes ahead and picks up the win in that game. So it was a great series, and might as well kick this thing off starting with a game that none of us really saw coming out of Middle Tennessee. It was Middle Tennessee and Toledo. They were the ones that started off this bowl mania. It was 31-24. Middle Tennessee takes home the win, polishes off Toledo there at the very end, and this was a game in that third quarter. Toledo's up 17-14, and then it's a 17-point run in the final quarter for Tennessee. Toledo can only get on board once, and I mean it comes down to a 59-yard touchdown from what's his name, Jaron Pierce. He gets way down the field and beats the coverage, and Nick Vadiato, 23 of 35, 270 yards and 2 touchdowns in that game. He just had the one throw where it mattered the most, and I mean, that is what kicked all of this off in the Bahamas Bowl, and since then, I mean, it just felt like that game set the table for everybody else to just go off, have fun, make this a party, man. It was a phenomenal way to end out the year. And this game really started this off. It was so balanced between these two teams. You saw the running back and Kovac for Toledo go 18 carries for 126 yards. Their leading receiver for Toledo had 4 receptions for 137 yards and a touchdown. I mean, it was just a great game back and forth.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you have two teams that, are pretty much the same here, both like same record now. Both 7-6. I mean, but you gotta look at Toledo here. I know Middle Tennessee didn't score anything in that third quarter, and now, like you talk about that third quarter, it's a big time to score. It's that third quarter Well, Toledo didn't score in the first or the third quarter, and that's what ended up hurting them. They didn't even get a field goal or anything. They would have had, even if they got a field goal in the first and third, they would have been a lot closer than they were. They were still close, but you got to score in those quarters. You can't put up 0 points in each quarter. You got to come away with at least something, Middle Tennessee, they made up for that in the fourth quarter by scoring 17 points in that fourth quarter. So that's where they really took away that game in that fourth quarter.
Yeah, that's for sure, Matt. And why none of these teams? Both teams finished with a winning record this season, so you can't really say it's a bad one.
Yeah.
MAC did struggle a little bit in this bowl season, despite how strong we kind of felt that this conference was going to be going into bowl season, because we saw them really pick each other apart. And it was what one of the divisions for the MAC. I think it was the MAC West. Every team had a winning record. So it was either MAC East or West. I don't remember which one it was. But the entire division had a winning record going into this bowl season. Obviously, Toledo's going to finish 7-6 here. They had a chance to get an 8-win season, which would have been phenomenal for the school. And it's obviously not to be here, but I think just still, it's a phenomenal run for Toledo in this season. But moving on to our next game here, Northern Illinois and my Coastal Carolina Chanticleers, man. This was an awesome game. Scoring galore. 47-41. My Chanticleers take home the victory. An 11-win team here, and this was phenomenal. They're one of just 28 teams this season to finish with 10-plus wins. What more can you ask for right now from college football than a group that's been in the FBS, 2-3 seasons, and they're a 10-win team, bowl champion, and they just beat the MAC champion in Northern Illinois in the Cure Bowl. A phenomenal game for Grayson Mccall. 22 of 30.
Grayson McCall's sweet.
315 yards and 4 touchdowns, while Braden Bennett on the ground goes for 108 on just 6 carries and 2 touchdowns for him, with a long of 60 yards in there. It was just everything that could go right did go right for Coastal. There was hardly any mistakes in this game for either really one of these teams. Defense was a no-show. You can pretty much say that. And on the other side, Rocky Lombardi pretty much proved what everybody thought about him at Michigan State. He can't win big games, and he can't close out when you need him the most. And you saw that in the fourth quarter. 10 points in the first, 14 in the second, 14 in the third, just 3 points in the fourth. The Huskies fell apart in the very end of this game. When they needed him the most, he was nowhere to be seen. And that was the same problem you saw at Michigan State over and over. When they had to fall back and count on him to win the game, he just couldn't do it. And now you're seeing the same thing coming out of this bowl game. Great performance throughout, 20 of 33, 181 yards and 2 touchdowns. Yeah. But at the end of the day, this Huskies team was a run-based team. And when they had to fall back on their passing game, it really was nowhere to be found.
No, but Jay Ducker, great performance on the ground. 24 carries, 146 yards. And how about Grayson? Huh?
Antonio Brown as well goes for 105 yards.
Yeah, so 2 guys rushing for over 100 yards. And, Antonio Brown, 12 carries and gets 105 yards. That's pretty sweet. Like you just said, they are a run-based offense. And I think they need to just stick with that strictly because, nothing against Rocky Lombardi. I like what he does, but he can't win those big games. Yes, they did win the MAC championship. That is a big game. But you can't pull out the bowl game. I know Chanticleer's a good team. They put up 10. They put up, either 10 or more points in every quarter except for that fourth quarter. You couldn't come up. If you would have got one more touchdown, you would have been right there. You would have won by what?
Yeah,
5 field goals. They would have won that game. But Grayson Mccall, like you said, this kid, he's just a sophomore too. This kid is already, in my opinion, shooting up draft boards, right now. And right now, probably projection like a 3rd round. He might be a 2nd round by the time he is ready, because if he's only going to get better. And he can get it down on the ground too, 10 carries, 40 yards rushing. So not only he can pass, but he can take off when he needs to. And that's what quarterbacks in the NFL are becoming to be these days. So keep an eye on Grayson Mccall. So
yeah, Matt, he can just be another one of those underdog stories of, small name school produces a quarterback who goes big. I mean, he definitely seems like he has the arm talent and the ability to find his guys out there on the field. So I mean, yeah, if he continues to improve by the time he's a senior and ready to go, I'm sure he's probably maybe not a second round, but I could definitely see a fourth or fifth round steal, much like we saw with Davis Mills out of Stanford this past season. Just one of those guys flies under the radar. Nobody even knows he gets picked in the draft, really, because by the time you're getting to the fifth and sixth rounds, no one's really watching because it's just a talent at the bottom of the screen like this, and you just get the update. Oh, he picked Grayson Mccall from Coastal Carolina. Who is that? What the hell school is that?
That's where the Tom Brady's are picked.
Get down into.
That's where the Tom Brady's are picked. Those 6 rounds.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see if McCall can turn this into the next one, and I would love to see that, have Coastal Carolina produce the next big guy in the NFL. I mean, that would be definitely a fun story to run through for anybody broadcasting NFL to put that one out there. How about our next game, though? The Radiance Technologies Independence Bowl, another phenomenal one to start out the year. I mean, talk about this. Our first 3 games, all within a possession of each other to start out Bowl Mania. Epic game. UAB, the Blazers, just returning from the death penalty of their football team, was it 4 or 5 seasons ago, and here they are in a 9-4 season. They take down a ranked number 13 BYU. The Cougars fall after a 10-win season to the Blazers of UAB. And can we just take a minute before we talk UAB? Talk this Cougars running back, Tyler Allgeier. If someone is shooting towards, it is Allgeier, man. 27 carries, 192 yards, and 3 touchdowns. He's been doing this thing all season, though. Tyler Allgeier is a special talent coming out of BYU. He helped Zach Wilson. Remember that. This guy was there with Zach Wilson last season, helping this team to become a powerhouse in the Independence last year. So, I mean, this is one part of me in the Mountain West. So, this Allgeier kid, man, he's got some special talent. So
he does. He's only a sophomore.
But obviously, on the other side, Dwayne McBride was stealing the show for UAB as well. I mean, 183 yards and a touchdown for him. Dylan Hopkins, their quarterback, being more used so in the red zone, short yardage passes, finding guys in space and letting his wide receivers make the work. I mean, you saw just 2 guys of the wide receiver core going for over 20 yards for this UAB on their longest reception. So a lot of short yard stuff for Dylan Hopkins. But he went 19 of 23, 189 yards and 3 touchdowns. He had a pick. It didn't come back to bite him. So besides mentioning it, I mean, no point even, going any more past that because this UAB squad comes away with the win in a phenomenal game. I mean, once again, we talk about, what quarters do you score in? And you saw BYU couldn't get it started in the first. And UAB went off to a 14-0 run. They go 21-14 going into halftime. And just from there, they just kept holding on. And BYU just couldn't crack the seal anymore to take that.
Allgeier got him back into the game pretty much. Right. And, by the end,
break that seal.
Well, yeah. I mean, by the end of the game, he had to be totally exhausted because they totally relied on him that whole game. Almost 200 yards rushing. I mean, the kid has around 1,600 total rushing yards on the season. And he's only a 1,606 yards rushing on the season. 23 touchdowns, averaging 5.8 yards per carry. And he's only a sophomore. I mean, look out for this guy in the NFL in a little bit. Allgeier, man. Maybe the Jets will draft him.
I mean, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing to say. I mean, you've seen the success of the Bengals right now, bringing in guys that Joe Burrow's comfortable with. I mean, they brought in, his wide receivers from LSU with them, and if anything is going to help the Jets, maybe it's just stealing some chemistry from college. So, yeah, I mean, not a terrible thing to say out there, man. I mean, bring it all there. What's the worst that can happen? I mean, for the worst that can happen for him is he gets drafted by the Jets. The worst thing that can happen for the Jets is they just fail again. So, I mean, maybe that's a risk they need to take.
I mean, they don't have a running back.
Yeah, they don't have an offensive line. They don't have a wide receiver. They don't have a defense. They hardly have a quarterback. So, might as well try something.
Try something.
All right. Next game on here, Matt. 2 more of some of our favorite teams here from the season. The Louisiana Raging Cajuns in the New Orleans Bowl getting to defend home turf against the Marshall Thundering Herd. Matt, we've always been pretty high on the Marshall squad. They ain't too far from us down there in Youngstown State. So, Marshall's always kind of been just one of those schools off the distance, tucked away in the foothills of the Appalachians in West Virginia, hidden along the Ohio River. And, it's just one of those teams. You see Marshall, you got to root for him a little bit. And Rasheen Ali, man, he did his job for the Thundering Herd. They come up 15 points short in this game. The passing game just couldn't get anything going, and the rush game couldn't save them. But Rasheen Ali tried, man. 160 yards and 3 touchdowns, averaged 8 yards per carry in this game against the Raging Cajuns. But on the other side, I mean, the Cajuns had 3 guys combined for 200-plus yards and 3 touchdowns on the ground. So whatever Ali was doing on one side, it seemed Louisiana was able to counter on the other way. And with no passing offense really to speak of, I mean, 15 of 26 for 99 yards for Grant Wells. There really wasn't anything it seemed Marshall could do against this Cajun squad. And, I mean, that's kind of what we expected, right? The Raging Cajuns were 12-1 coming into this game. They had a near-perfect season. Their first game was the only one they lost. They are on a 13-game win streak right now and have to be one of the favorites to win their division conference next season, and probably should be ranked to start out the year, considering they haven't lost in, 4 months?
Yeah, they should be. They should be. They lost that first game. I watched that Texas game. I was playing some cornhole and watching that Texas game. I'm like, hey, Texas looks good this year. And I'm like, no. So much is to answer in that. That's the only game the Raging Cajuns have lost. That's unbelievable. Hopefully they keep that going and into next season as well.
And
Matt, they could have easily had an undefeated season
because they've been doing this for a couple of years now, making some great seasons. And really, I mean, I think these last 2 they have been near undefeateds in both of them.
Yeah, I bet you if they play that Texas game again, they roll Texas.
Probably, and I mean, you got to look at some of these wide receivers the Raging Cajuns were putting out there. I mean, Michael Jefferson, 3 receptions, 108 yards, and Jacob Bernard had 2 receptions for 59, including one that went for 42. And I mean, you just try and compare that to the opposite wide receivers. The longest passing play for Marshall in this game was 14 yards. Louisiana had 3 guys have plays bigger than that through the air. So, I mean, there was a real talent gap between these 2 squads. And, I mean, I think when you put a ranked 12-1 team in a matchup against somebody that is 7-5, you kind of expected this kind of decimation. And it was really the first time this bowl season that we had seen this level of dominance out of one side of the football.
That we have. I mean, really, 14 yards? Man.
That was the longest
more than that.
play of the day.
Got to get more than that.
The team only had like 98 passing yards. So, I mean, it's not that unbelievable to think that this Louisiana defense was letting they let them take whatever they wanted on the ground. They were sitting back in pass coverage and went, hey, if you want to throw the football, good freaking luck, because we know you can't. And, I mean, they just kind of slapped them in the face with that all night long.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely have the running game, but Marshall, they got to go out and recruit some more receivers, and they've done that in the past. So, like, they've had good receivers come through Marshall, and I mean, the running game is good. Just throw a couple of receivers in there, and you'll be just fine. So,
well, moving on once again, this one, the Boca Raton Bowl with Western Kentucky, one of the best offenses, the best offense in college football this season, and Appalachian State, who were 10-3 going into this one. This was the biggest margin of victory out of our opening weekends here, 59-38 for Western Kentucky. They dominated this one, and man, I think we all kind of were leaning towards Appalachian State a little bit in this game. I think I may have taken Western Kentucky. We've talked a lot of football, obviously, so
I like Appalachian State, so I just picked them.
Actually, I'm the only one that took Western Kentucky in this game. Looking back at who we made the picks on, starting this out, man, we were all pretty even. Obviously, we missed the second week. A lot of those games because of me. But I mean, you saw Bailey Zapp in this game, 422 yards and 6 touchdowns, no interceptions for Bailey Zapp. And I mean, if you're talking anybody, a potential guy to fly up some recruiting boards for the NFL, it's got to be Bailey Zapp, man. He dominated this offense. We talk about level of competition and all that. You went up against a 10-win Appalachian State team that has been known for defense over the years, and you have a wide receiver, a running back that goes off for 150 yards. You have a wide receiver that is nearing the 200-yard mark, and Jarrett Stearns, who probably should also be flying up recruiting boards, 184 yards in 3 touchdowns for Jarrett Stearns. And then Mitchell Tinsley got 2 touchdowns and 103 yards as well. I mean, this team is loaded with offensive talent that I could very easily see this squad having those 3 guys probably taken inside the top 4 or 5 rounds of the NFL draft whenever they decide to go in. This Kentucky offense is phenomenal group, and their defense has pretty much said, thank you very much. We can hold the opponent under 50 points all season long. And that's what they did again. And keep in mind, they weren't doing this against some slouch of a quarterback. They were doing this against former Clemson quarterback Chase Bryce. Chase Bryce in this game had 317 yards and 4 touchdowns, but a crucial interception that just gave all the momentum to Western Kentucky in that third quarter.
Yeah, I mean, Bailey Zapp, this kid is going to be something in the NFL. I mean, I project like 4th, 5th round, maybe 6th round. We won't go into
He's definitely a late round quarterback, but he's probably a steal coming that late in the game.
A lot of people might say, oh, he'll be a backup. But I mean, I can see this guy being a starter, you know. And right now,
the team that's thinking for a few years before starting, though.
Yeah, maybe back up for a little bit. But the team that's clicking in my head right now, how about like the Saints or somebody like that? I mean, they don't really have anybody there.
Yeah.
I mean, the book is closed.
I think he kind of fits the system.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So, I mean, we'll get into that later near April. But
we'll see who else missed the draft. I mean, we don't know anything yet.
Yeah, we don't know anything
for the most part, besides our big names at the top. So,
but Bailey Zapp, look out for him. Like 5,967 passing yards on the season, 62 touchdowns, only 11 interceptions. That's tied for 103rd. He was first in those other 2 categories. That's insane.
Okay, so Matt, here is the story of this Bailey Zapp kid.
Yeah.
He's a one-and-done quarterback. He was coming out of Houston Baptist, that's spending 4 seasons down there in the FCS. Transfers up here to Western Kentucky, is a one-and-done and has declared for the NFL draft. So he's 6'1". Matt, I think the Saints are the perfect team to grab this guy.
Right.
6,000 career yards passing, 62 touchdowns in this last season. I mean, epic performer in his career.
Right, I was thinking Saints immediately.
Career, actually, he's had 6,000 yards. Or pardon me, yes, that is his career. Sorry, 6,000 yards. I mean, just an epic performance for this guy. He's just a complete package right now, and right now he's being projected a 4th to 6th round guy. And Matt, as I'm looking here on fansided.com, one of the top places for him to go is in fact the New Orleans Saints. So
no way,
a good place to look at there.
I don't know, maybe. Nah, I don't think anybody else. They
said the Giants and the Cowboys were the other 2
The
fits.
Cowboys? All right, maybe.
As a backup, I mean.
How about like maybe a backup in Arizona?
If there's any team that is desperate for a backup, it seems like the Cowboys, and Zapp could be a perfect situation there. I mean, with the unknowns of Dak Prescott's injuries that just seem to come out of nowhere, even when he's having his best seasons, they could use a strong-armed quarterback like that just to hold the fort down. They're not expecting Dak's numbers, but just to hold the fort down, that could be an epic way to go.
But that could even be helpful for Arizona for when Murray goes down.
Yeah, potentially. All right, though, we got to keep moving the show along here.
Yep.
UTEP Miners fall just short of Fresno State. They gave them an absolute shock, but the Miners come up short. That's a little unfortunate there. You know, if you ever seen Glory Road,
I just watched it last night, man.
Yeah, but Fresno, Matt, they're one of those 28 teams that extended up to 10 wins this season, double-digit wins. So great game for them, and they get to finish off the season in epic fashion. And I mean, not really too many highlights came out of this game, so let's just continue to roll along here through our Bowl Mania. We're still really in the first week, so Liberty dominated Eastern Michigan. This was a game that they really should have dominated. They did just that. Malik Willis, was off the charts once again, 231 yards and 3 touchdowns. Can't ask for anything else. That was one of the big MAC teams that struggled. Utah State went in there and they punished Oregon State, the Pac-12, the worst conference this season in terms of bowl results. They were 0-5 this year in bowl games, so I mean, what more can you say? If just that's atrocious. Continuing to move on here into our second week. Tulsa takes on the win against Old Dominion. You kind of expected that one. This one, San Diego State and University of Texas San Antonio, 2 12-win squads to finish off the season. And San Diego State ends up coming away with the win. I mean, this was another one of those things that we had really been hyping up, looking forward to.
The Roadrunners.
Johnson of San Diego State goes 24-36, 333 yards and 3 touchdowns, while Jay Matthews for San Diego State goes for 175 yards receiving and 2 touchdowns.
Too
great
bad
performance out of the San Diego State squad.
Too bad for the Roadrunners. UTSA, they had a pretty good season, and too bad they couldn't pull up the bowl game. But hats up to the Aztecs, though. I mean, they've been kind of floating around near that bottom ranking for a while, so it's good for them to get a bowl game win.
Yeah, finally. And next game up here, Kent State. The Golden Flashes come up short again, this one against the Wyoming Cowboys. But give some credit to the Kent State quarterback here, Dustin Crum, 316 yards, 4 touchdowns. The running game for Kent State was fantastic. They had 300 yards on the ground between Marquez Cooper, Brian Bradford, and Dustin Crum, their quarterback, who had the lone rushing touchdown in the game. But if you just flip this over to the other side quarterback, he single-handedly beat Kent State. He accounted for 5 touchdowns in this game. His 5 touchdowns alone puts them within 3 points of
200 yards rushing.
Right. 200 yards rushing on just 16 carries, a long of 80 yards in there. 4 rushing touchdowns in this game for Levi Williams. Oh, and by the way, he was 9 of 11 through the air with 127 yards and a touchdown as well. So
he had to be sore.
He was taking a very long ice bath afterwards. But, I mean, Kent State, man, they put everything into this game. Dante Cephas had 116 yards. Nakeem Johnson, 101 yards receiving. I mean, this team put everything into it. They just didn't have the talent level to compete against, obviously, that opposing quarterback in Levi. So, I mean, great performance to them, but they come up just short of the Potato Bowl. No French fry bath for the coach of Kent State. Next game up for us, Mizzou and Army. Army comes away with a 2-point win, and what a great season for them. I mean, really the only thing you can take away from this, they didn't beat Navy, and that's got to be the one thing eating on their mind, because if they beat Navy, they are the 29th team with a 10-win season. So, I mean, they came that short of being one of those teams in elite status this season. Instead, they're just another 9-win team, but got to give credit to our armed forces here, putting together a fantastic season and giving us some excitement all the way through. You never knew what to expect out of this team, and it was really one of the most versatile Army teams that we've ever seen come through in these last probably decade or so out of this Army squad.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. They have been good. I mean, the Navy game, that anything can happen in those games, but I still think Army was the better team of the season. I mean, Navy they played 100% in that game. They have to. So, I mean, that's why they ended up pulling it out. But Army had some plays go their way as well, too. I mean, the fake punt. So, but Army, great on the season. It's good to see them get a bowl game win. But I wish they would have had, honestly, a more competitive opponent. I mean, really, Missouri? I don't know. I feel they were kind of dogged there. At least they gave them the Armed Forces Bowl.
Well, okay, next game up here, this one. Once again, the Mac coming away with a win here against the North Texas Mean Green. Brett Gabbert, sibling of Blaine backup quarterback Blaine Gabbert. So the younger brother Brett gets a win here, goes 22 of 31, 230 yards and 2 touchdowns in that win. Kenny Tracy gets a rushing touchdown as well, and Jack Sorensen, pretty darn good wide receiver for Miami, goes up for 116 yards in this game. So not really much to go over. It wasn't a super yards out of anyone. No one really jumped their draft status coming out of these games. So on to the next one. This one, I think, was probably one of the most intriguing matchups. The 9-4 UCF Golden Knights and the Florida Gators, who were on a terrible season, but they were in that close game against Alabama. And you saw UCF come away with the win, man, 29-7.
It was a good game.
Taking home the state of Florida, basically. And, I mean, they didn't have epic performances out of really more than just their two guys. Ryan O'Keefe had a 74-yard run, didn't give him a touchdown, but Isaiah Bowser goes for 155 yards on 2 touchdowns. And, I mean, that was the storyline for UCF. They went behind the strength of him. They didn't have superstar performances out of really anybody else there, but, I mean, they got just enough once again. And sometimes in these games, you just have to have one guy give you just enough to pull that off, and that's exactly what happens. And I mean, Daniel Obarski, their kicker, goes 3 or 4 on field goals and combines for 11 points that really put this team in the position to win. I mean, those 11 points is a one-point game between these two teams. So UCF once again showing that more than likely they're the best college football team in the state of Florida.
Oh yeah, they are.
Next game up here for us, Matt, Georgia State. They had a phenomenal season. They really did. They finished 8-5. This was a team we were watching out for every week to pull the upset. They've had a few throughout the season. I can't say of a more fitting way to end it off than with the bowl win. I mean, it's the Camellia Bowl. They probably could have had a better opponent going into it, but I mean, they got a massive pick 6 coming out of this, and their quarterback and Darren Granger goes 15-19 for 200 yards and 3 touchdowns, and he also collects 122 on the ground with another rushing touchdown. And I mean, Aubrey Payne gets 2 receiving touchdowns as well, and they straight up dominated this game. Deshaun Jackson for Ball State goes out for 146, and I mean, that's really their lone performer that played really great in this game, and that reflected in the score, a 31-point loss there for Ball State.
Yeah, I mean, Georgia State just amazing on the season.
We saw all season.
Oh,
even though their record didn't reflect it, they were a straight up
8-5 is not bad. 8-5 is totally not a bad record, but I mean, they played some tough teams, and they took it to them, and that really showed it in this game. I mean, Ball State, a good team coming out of the MAC, and this really weren't any match for Georgia State. Georgia State scored 28 points in the third quarter.
Yeah. I mean, they took off like a cannon, man. Our next game up here, another team that went off, Western Michigan. They extend to 8 wins again here against the Nevada Wolfpack, who was already at 8 wins. I really thought Nate Cox was going to give us a better performance for the Wolfpack, but he comes up just short. And on the other side, rushing football, 352 total yards on the ground for the Broncos with 4 touchdowns there. Sean Tyler getting the longest 70 yards on 146 yards in total on that game. 2 touchdowns for Jackson Kincaid. I mean, just an epic game for the Broncos, and I mean, great to see it. I mean, we haven't seen the Broncos really be that powerhouse school since the departure of PJ Fleck to Minnesota, and I mean, once again, we're kind of seeing this team come back around, and you got to love it if you're in the MAC. You got another powerhouse coming back to fruition after, I mean, you really felt after Fleck left, this team was just going to go right back down to the bottom because so many times in some of the smaller conferences, the smaller teams, so much does rely on the head coach of the team and what he provides in recruiting and who he can get out of the transfer portal. And you saw that for Fleck so many times during that perfect season of theirs. So, I mean, great to see this Western Michigan squad back in a position, winning some big games. I mean, they take home the Quick Lane Bowl this year, but hey, I mean, who knows what next year could have in store for them?
Yeah, and I can't wait to see what is in store for this Western Michigan team next year. They've had some big wins on the year, and I mean, ultimately, I really think that Carson Strong if he would have played this game, it would have been a lot closer. But of course, he opted out, and of course, Nate played. So, but I mean, Western Michigan on the season, they had the big win against Pitt. A lot of people looked at that. But, I mean, they had some big losses. I mean, of course, they're going to lose. I mean, they lost to Michigan. And, they also lost, to Ball State, too. So, but good bounce back win for them in this bowl game.
Yeah, totally there, Matt. And, one of those games I don't think we got into the last week here. Actually, no, I am looking at it. You picked Western Michigan. I took Nevada. Even without Carson Strong, I still thought they had the potential to win it. They don't. Next game up here for us is we got to keep moving on here. A lot of bowl games, obviously, to go through. Boston College, East Carolina. This was a big one we were looking forward to, the Military Bowl. First one that got canceled, and this really set the table for quite a few games getting the rock throughout this Bowl Mania season. Yeah. So next game after that came to one of our most exciting games, I think, of the bowl season, and our first real, oh my gosh, yeah, this is what we thought this team was, and it was the Houston Cougars. They come apart with the win over the Auburn Tigers. They give one of those SEC 8 total wins, 8 total losses throughout this season. Future Big 12 team showing up for Houston Cougars. I mean, didn't have any super performances outside of Nathaniel Dell, who goes off for 150 yards receiving. I mean, everyone else pretty much did their jobs, and they come apart with a 17-13 win. I mean, it was really just defense set the table, and with no Bo Nix, Auburn just didn't have any firepower. They had to rely on TJ Finley, who, put together a good game, but they didn't have much of a run game. We were hoping more out of Tank Bigsby. He was their leading rusher and receiver, so Auburn's going to need a lot of rebuilding come this offseason. They're going to have to find some position players, some skill guys to really ignite this offense, because at the moment it doesn't seem like they got much going on in terms of that firepower. And we saw them struggle all throughout the SEC season of trying to keep up with the speed of these other teams in their conference, and they just couldn't do it the entire season. And it once again falls apart here in bowl weekend.
Yeah, I mean, and I actually watched this game. This was a pretty exciting win to get for Houston. Tank Bigsby, he's leaving Auburn. He's in the transfer portal. He still played this game, and that's kind of cool to see him just get one final go with Auburn. They know he's leaving, and he still played the bowl game, and he had a pretty good performance. I mean, 96 yards rushing. That's cool to see, and that would have been cool to see Bo Nix still play too, just to see one final time. Of course, he's transferring to Oregon, I think, right?
Yes.
So I don't know where Bigsby's going, but wherever he's going to go, they're going to have some help. So
yeah, he's definitely a multi-level talent. But moving on here, next game, our First Responders Bowl, Air Force Falcons and the Louisville Cardinals. The game, Matt, you and I both took the Falcons to win this game, and their quarterback, man, he put together one heck of a performance. Hazik Daniels, 9 of 10. Forget this, 252 yards. The man was averaging 25 yards per passing attempt here. He got 2 touchdowns, but I mean, when you just explode in the second quarter, I mean, the team had 21 of the 31 points come just in the second quarter alone, and they got 7 points in the first quarter, blanked in the third, and just a field goal in the fourth to win the game. I mean, this team, they did just enough, and you kind of feel for Malik Cunningham on the other side. He's really put together another phenomenal season with Louisville. I mean, he's such, it feels like a Lamar Jackson prototype quarterback, and it just, once again, doesn't come out for a win for him. And you got to hope that this team can bring him some guys around him to really be able to compete at a higher level, because at the moment, it just doesn't feel like this Louisville squad is what it was when Lamar Jackson was there. They don't have the talent around Cunningham to really be able to compete at a high level.
Yeah, I mean, Cunningham is sweet, but they need to get him some more weapons, and then they'll be on their way. I mean, you look at this game, Air Force. I mean, we both picked Air Force in this game for a reason, and they went off, and we picked them because I mean, Cunningham still 207 yards passing, but I mean, and 63 rushing yards as well. But I think he needs just a little bit more. He needs that main guy to go to. I mean, Tyler Harrell, 80 yards, 4 receptions, and a touchdown. But I think you need to one up that. Honestly, you need a guy that's doing over 100 receiving yards and a couple more touchdowns, and you'll be better. And I think I like their run game. With Cunningham, getting some runs as well because he's a mobile quarterback, and I like Cooley too, 92 rushing yards in this game. I like that, but I think they need a couple more receivers, a couple more guys in there to help Cunningham, honestly.
Yeah, well, moving on here once again, Texas Tech takes a dominating win over Mississippi State, one we weren't really expecting, but, I mean, crazy game there. Minnesota in a slow slugfest against West Virginia, pull off the win 18-6 there. NC State's bowl game and the Holiday Bowl canceled, and then we move on here into some of our bigger games here. We still got to fly through them. Just 20 minutes left here on the show.
Yep.
Oregon and Oklahoma, man, an absolute shootout between these two squads, and I think once again, you saw Anthony Brown really kind of boast his resume along with Travis Dye. I mean, these two guys are some special talents, and obviously Oregon will get back C.J. Friedel next season if he doesn't declare for the draft or enter the transfer portal. So, I mean, whichever way he decides to go, I mean, it's going to be a pretty great season next year for this Oregon squad, depending on who they have. But keep in mind, they're going to get Bo Nix as well. So this Oregon squad, I mean, they should be back at full strength offensively. Defensive side, I think, is where you got to worry without Kayvon Thibodeau and a couple of their other big guys who are going to the NFL draft. And obviously, Noah Sewell is going to be a huge loss defensively if he goes as well. So I definitely think Oregon's going to be without some big guys next season defensively, and that's where I'm going to worry about them. But offensively, man, this team should be set. Oklahoma, man, they were just better in every category. Caleb Williams is a very special talent. Kennedy Brooks is another great running back for Oklahoma. They keep churning them out down there at both positions, and obviously Caleb Williams has hit the transfer portal. If I had to guess, I'd probably say UNC would be a great fit for Caleb Williams. I know he likes the beach out there on the East Coast, and I think he'd be a great fit out there with Mac Jones as their head coach of UNC and potentially put that team back on the map once again this season. But Matt, any thoughts on this Alamo Bowl?
Yeah, I like Stoops here. Bob Stoops coming in. Interim. I mean, Youngstown guy, just like his brother, and his son catching a touchdown too. Drake Stoops for a touchdown. Has he been on this team this whole year? Has he been on this team this whole year and just hasn't played?
Yeah, he had a couple of passing receptions throughout the season, but I don't think he had much playing time.
Okay.
And Daddy calls his number and he delivers, man.
Yeah, that was a good moment.
When, you know, it's the father saying, hey, we're going to my son on this one. A lot of people go, oh, great. He's just giving it to his kid. But it's a different story when the kid actually delivers on it. When they deliver, you go, all right, it worked. Good job, but you know,
sweet. Let's get
it to our guys here. But I mean, it works out. I mean, Oklahoma, they pull off a huge win here. Next game up for us, though, Clemson Tigers and the Iowa State Cyclones. No epic performances out of this one. Just a solid day, I would say, at the office for the running backs of Clemson. No great performance. I mean, it's a 20-13 game in the Cheez-It Bowl. They're definitely going to have to find a way to either get DJ up to speed and get this guy to be the pro-level quarterback that we thought he was going to be, or potentially tell him to hit the transfer portal and say next man up in Clemson, because they definitely got some issues there, and he finishes this game without a single passing touchdown. So definitely a disappointment season for DJ Uiagalelei. And I mean, I think if you're giving out superlatives right now of who had the most disappointing season out of anybody in college football, it's got to be DJ. I mean, the guy, I think, finished with under 15 passing touchdowns. I think he had more interceptions on the season, and while the team won games, it was not as a result of him.
Yeah, just he got too much hype, you know. DJ, we'll give it a try. Uiagalelei, I mean, I think that's pretty close, but that's good enough. But, I mean, he got too much hype. I mean, he came into that Notre Dame game last year when Lawrence was out, and they're like, yeah, and they almost won that game. But I'm like, that's our next guy, all right. And then just nothing. I don't know. I do like the running back, though, Shipley. I think he has potential. So,
all right, moving on here. Probably if you were to give out superlative for one of the most dominating performances, it has to go to the Maryland Terrapins. 50
I didn't expect this.
Over Virginia Tech. Taulia Tagovailoa goes 20-24, 265 yards and 2 touchdowns. The rushing game spread between 5 guys, puts up 206 yards and 3 touchdowns. And on the other side, just one single touchdown from Connor Blumrick on 15 carries for 11 yards, averaged 0.7 yards per carry, and had just one touchdown. Just one rushing play went for over 10 yards, and that came from Jalen Houston, and a handful of receptions that went for more than 10 yards. Looks like they had 4 of those, but I mean, just a terrible performance from Virginia Tech and an epic one from the Terrapins of Maryland. Not much else going on there, but SMU Virginia was canceled. On to some of our other big games, Matt. Pitt, Michigan State. This game, man, could have been so much better if we had our main guys in for both squads. I mean,
I know.
There was no quarterback play for Pitt, and it killed them, and no rushing game at all for Michigan State. So both these teams had to rely on something that they didn't have to rely on all season, and that was somebody else than their star. And I mean, I think it reflected on both sides when you got into this game, and it really turned into a crap fest that it did not live up to the billing of what this game could have been with the likes of Kenny Pickett and Kenneth Davis playing in this game. A good win for the Big Ten, pick up a top 15 victory with Michigan State over Pitt, but it definitely hurts that neither squad had their best guy in, and it came down to Peyton Thorne. He just had a little bit more experience, and it helped where it mattered the most, and you end up picking Pitt in this game. I took Michigan State, and it just turned into another one of those games that it just wasn't what we thought it was going to be. It was still a good game. I mean, don't get me wrong. It was close.
It was a good game. Pitt just couldn't hang on.
Last-minute excitement. I mean, you saw a 21-10 lead going into the fourth quarter, and Michigan State blanks Pitt in the fourth quarter and puts up 21 of their own to steal the win. I mean, it had everything you could ask for, including 114 receiving yards for Addison of Pitt. But it did not live up to what we thought this game could have been with our stars in it, with Heisman contenders on both sides.
If Pickett would have played, I mean, I'm not saying Pitt would have won this game, but I mean, it would have been a pretty good shot that they were going to win this game. Patty goes down.
Would have won if he plays that game without Kenneth Davis on the other side. Or Kenneth Walker, pardon me, on the other side. I definitely say Pickett can lead this team to a win. With how close it was, and that fourth quarter becoming huge. And when it comes down to fourth quarter and you can't score, you need that veteran quarterback. And
they had their third string quarterback in after Patty went down. Beville. I mean, just not enough experience. Patty, I mean, he was taken off on that run. I mean, he should have stepped out of bounds. Man, you're a backup quarterback. You're stepping in, and you get injured on first quarter. I mean, come on.
All right, man, we got to continue moving on here. 13 minutes left to go. UNC falls short of South Carolina in the Mayo Bowl, and head coach for the South Carolina. What?
That was they poured mayonnaise on his head.
They poured mayonnaise on him, but they dropped the bucket on his head first. When they're lifting it up and pouring it over, the momentum of the mayonnaise bonked it right down on the back of his head. It looked like it hurt, man. Then he gets covered in mayonnaise. I mean, don't wear something that you want to ever wear again, because that's getting straight up ruined with mayonnaise. No, I mean, a couple good performances in this one. Bell for South Carolina goes 159 yards, 2 touchdowns. Harris on the ground for the Gamecocks as well, goes 182 and a touchdown there. Nothing great. This next one gave us a pretty great performance out of Aiden O'Connell of Purdue. An overtime victory for the Big Ten over the Tennessee Volunteers, 48-45 in overtime. Aiden O'Connell goes for 534 yards and 5 touchdowns, 3 interceptions for him. On the other side, Hendon Hooker, man, 378 yards and 5 touchdowns for the Volunteers. Quarterbacks were having themselves a day. Cedric Tillman, 3 receiving touchdowns for Tennessee with 150 yards. Brock Thompson goes for 217 receiving and 2 touchdowns as well. Payne Durham gets 2 receiving touchdowns. I mean, so long defense. This was an offensive shootout between these two squads, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, that it was. I mean, this was a very exciting game to watch as well. I mean, you don't get a better bowl game than this, shootouts. So,
yeah, if you wanted offense, this was the one to go into. Maybe the Rose Bowl, but I mean, that was one of those big ones you were tuning into. The Music City Bowl, man. They were playing some club music, man. It was nonstop.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, next game for us here, the Las Vegas Bowl. Wisconsin Badgers pull the win over the Arizona State Sun Devils. Once again, no great performances in this game. It was just a solid team play for Wisconsin. Low-scoring affair, defense won it. That's kind of how Wisconsin plays it, and they pull out a victory. They get up to 9 wins on the season. Got to give them some credit there for having another good Braylon Allen on the ground, 159 yards for them. And Pac-12 obviously struggled this bowl season. It's kind of one of those discussions that we were having throughout the year of Pac-12 doesn't look like it's up to the height. They got a strong top half with Oregon and Utah, but in their big games, they couldn't pull through. So Pac-12 probably looking more like a group of 5 team, while the American looking like the American and the Mountain West both looking like that they could be some, Power 5 teams coming up here in the next few years. And we might have a reshuffling of college football. You never know.
You never know.
You never know. Turn USC around, and UCLA getting a new quarterback in there as well. If he can turn some things around, I believe. But moving on here, college football semifinal, Alabama versus Cincinnati. Sorry, that's a force of habit there. Alabama, Cincinnati.
It is.
It was just a great game on the ground for Alabama. Brian Robinson just cemented himself in this game, 204 yards, and he let everybody else take care of business. And you can't blame this one on the Cincinnati defense. That offense with Desmond Ridder and Jerome Ford, they just couldn't do anything. Their offensive line was just suffocated. And before, Matt, I'll let you go here in a second. Before we get into, what this means for the group of five, I don't think it means anything. I think this was a good, solid performance. Semifinals are known for blowouts. It's what we expect out of them. And the Bearcats defense, they held this Alabama team to 27 points. Georgia held them to 41. So, I think you can say Cincinnati, their defense, pretty darn good. So
darn good. So I don't want to hear this.
Competitive. I definitely think Cincinnati earned their spot in the playoffs this season. I don't regret putting them in there.
No.
They finished this off as probably a top 5 team. They might slip a spot with the way some other teams performed, but I think when we come out with our final rankings next week, you're going to see Cincinnati remain in that top 5.
Yeah, I'll go quick here, but I've heard people saying, they should never put another group of 5 team in the playoffs ever again. Listen, you just said it there. Georgia held them to 41 points. They held them to 27. They just couldn't get their offense going in this game. Like you said, Ridder and Ford and the offensive line were just suffocated by all these 5-star guys. Pretty much everybody on this Alabama team is 4 or a 5-star, okay? There's barely any 3 or 2 stars. They're all top talents, okay? And they're just rushing at you. You're a group of 5 team. You're making history here, and they're just flying at you. And they were just suffocating, okay? And the fact that they held them to 27 points, and they kind of pulled away there at the end.
Right.
This was a close game.
All right, now we do got to move on here. Got to go rapid fire on this one. Georgia, Michigan completely, came up short in this one. Georgia, their offense finally ticked, and if this offense plays like that again, and so does their defense, we should see them crown national champions. I just don't know if they can do it against Nick Saban.
I don't think so.
All right, we'll talk about that game on Monday, the national championship coming up next week. Wake Forest, they dominated Rutgers. We expected it. Rutgers, a late game edition. Central Michigan pulls the upset over Washington State. We actually predicted that one going into last week, 24-21 for the Chippewas there of Antonio Brown's former squad. On our New Year's Day, Oklahoma State, Notre Dame kicked things off in the Fiesta Bowl, an epic game there, 37-35. Cowboys come away with the game. Quarterback for Notre Dame, man, Jack Cohn goes 500 yards and 5 touchdowns. Spencer Sanders goes 4 touchdowns, 371 yards, and 125 on the ground. Matt, they set the table for the offense today, and what followed was nothing short of freaking amazing. Why don't we go ahead and get right into that here? Utah and Ohio State, bowl game of the year, bar none. C.J. Stroud goes 573, 6 touchdowns. Henderson on the ground goes 83 yards. Cam Rising, 214 yards and 2 touchdowns. Jackson Smith-Njigba, 347 yards, 3 touchdowns. Marvin Harrison Jr., 3 touchdowns and 71 yards. Guys were going freaking everywhere in this game. This was absolutely freaking insane, man. This was the game everybody wanted to see. And it lived up to all the hype you could ask for coming out of it. And for my Buckeyes, I was down on them, man. We were down 14-0.
I know, you were mad. You were really mad.
It was 21 at halftime, and I was just like, oh, my God, I can't believe this. And I know the one big takeaway everyone says in this game was, Cameron Rising goes down on their final drive. Yeah, but it still finished in a touchdown, and Bryson Barnes 2 for 2 with 23 yards, 1.5 average, and a touchdown. To me, the loss of Cam Rising didn't hurt this team as much as a lot of people are kind of spinning it to sound. Cam Rising is definitely huge in this game, but
that one touchdown he broke with the spin move was insane. But real quick here, I won't talk too much about the Notre Dame game, but I want to put out a shout out. Lorenzo Styles Jr. had a touchdown. His dad's from Farrell. I work with his cousins at the store I work at, so I want to give a shout out to that. That's cool. Kind of a local guy. He was from Pinkerton, Ohio. So that's pretty cool. He's playing in a top game like that. But with this Ohio State game, you got those young guys playing. Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be sweet. He's going to be sweet. And, I love Penn State. I'm diehard blue and white, okay? And we know Mike hates Ohio State, but I don't really, I really don't mind Ohio State. It's just that team up north that I can't stand, okay? I don't mind Ohio State because the Pittsburgh Steelers draft them a lot. So I like to see those cool guys come out.
Matt, get to the point here, man. We got 5 minutes to go.
This is going to be a dangerous team here in the future, okay? Look out for these younger guys. Just look out.
Once again, Ohio State's probably going to open up the best wide receiving core in the nation. And that's scary to say that they lose 2 first-round draft picks at the wide receiver position, and they still have 4 or 5 guys behind them that can replace that production. And defensively, while this game was a defensive nightmare, you got to give credit to Tommy Eichenberg. 17 total tackles in this game for the Ohio State defense. He was the only guy that seemed to be able to tackle defensively. And I do want to give another shout out here. Cade Stover moves from wide receiver to play linebacker in this game because Ohio State didn't have any, and he joins a running back, Steel Chambers, for Ohio State's defense, and they end up doing just enough. That final half, man, say what you will about Ohio State's defense, they showed up to finish that game out. And it was
sweet
performance. Finishing out here the show, Baylor took down Ole Miss 21-7. Obviously, no big story for Ole Miss. No Matt Corral. No shot for that one. Iowa, Kentucky was a great game.
Hopefully he's okay.
Put his name back on the map. Will Robinson, 170 receiving yards for Kentucky. Penn State fell short once again. Sean Clifford said he's going to stay another season. He shouldn't be the starter. If he does, he probably needs to be benched. No NFL future for him whatsoever. An absolute disappointment for Penn State fans everywhere. Alar should probably be the starter at least after the 3rd or 4th week of the season. I don't see Sean Clifford getting much going on here. And then we finish out the season with Kansas State pulling off a big win over LSU. Obviously, LSU out a ton of starters. And you saw Kansas State. Obviously, we just talked about this game on Tuesday. And Kansas State pulls out the win in this one, and it was a great performance for them. I mean, LSU just did not live up to the billing at all. And with all those guys out, no head coach available, it was K-State all the way. Went across the board on that one. That's what it ended up being. So great performances there across the board. And Matt, we got to do some rapid fire picks here in the NHL. Rangers, Golden Knights. I'm taking the Golden Knights. Who do you got?
I'm going Rangers. I like this Rangers team.
Next team up, Blue Jackets for the Devil versus the Devils. I'm going hometown here, Columbus. Give me the Blue Jackets.
Yeah, I'll probably roll Blue Jackets too. Yeah.
All right, in the NBA, Celtics versus Knicks. Both got the same record, but the Knicks have been a little bit better, so I'm giving it to the New York team.
Yeah, I'm going to Sam. I got you the Knicks here. I don't really see too much out of Boston. So
yeah, all right. Bucks versus the Nets here. Final NBA game we're talking about before the show is over. Bucks versus Knicks. I like Milwaukee, man. They're a storyline you just got to follow. Give me the Bucks.
Even though Irving's coming back, right? Or he came back.
He'll be back, I think, tomorrow.
Okay.
So he won't be in this game, I don't believe.
Okay, that Bucks.
All right, man. Help. Well, that's everything we got right now for the Casual Sports Podcast. Matt, we made it. College football season nearly officially over. We'll finish off the year Monday and Tuesday talking national championship preview and results on the Tuesday show. So we got to get into that, but that's going to do it here for the Casual Sports Podcast Thursday edition, wrapping up here. NFL preview coming in tomorrow, final week of the regular season. Matt, we got to find some things to talk about here on the show coming up, but that is going to do it. We'll figure that out behind the scenes. We'll see you all